I believe I've mentioned this before, that sometimes first impressions when it comes to our vehicles usually takes maybe a second, third, or fourth test drive. That was such the case when this showed up behind me. Hey, welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Robertson. Now behind me is the all-new 2020 Nissan Versa. And what it has done is reimagined and reshaped my overall thinking to the somewhat small sedan. When I first test drove the previous model of the Versa, I gave it the good old shrug of the shoulders. Nothing really to complain about, but not really a big wow factor. But that is just how the small sedan market is. Think back to Corollas and hybrids and pretty much straightforward offerings. But things have begun to change. If you look at those offerings now, well, they're chiseling things up, a little bit more wow factor. So Nissan had to step up their game when it came to the Versa, hence the 2020 offering. Now for this week, it all starts with the orange metallic exterior. Kind of gave me a little notice and said, well, things are a little bit different. Then I started looking at design from whence we came. First off, here at the hood, things a lot more raised, chiseled, a lot more aerodynamics, sweeping down to a very lower fascia, flared out front end. Obviously, you have the stylizing of the grille up front, goes across the whole Nissan family in a two-tone approach with the black and bright chrome, and obviously body color all the way around. If you look right at the headlights, these a lot more sleek versus kind of a bubbled out like approach in the previous version. Now sweeping over to the side, obviously even more to talk about there. From this angle, you can see the grille warfare, but really you can see the pronounced aerodynamics when it comes to the silhouette. Really first starting with the very sloped front hood, but culminating here at the glass and sweeping all the way to the back with a nice overall low stance to the roof line and culminating to a very modest rear deck lid and implied rear spoiler. Now the overall height has been reduced by 2.3 inches, and that really minimizes that kind of arching look we see in a lot of small sedans that really give it a quirky kind of atmosphere. This provides a lot more sportier look. Now from the profile, which you also notice, nice hard midline through here, but if you look right above the fender, this comes right across here and disappears as you blend into the side profile. Really give you nice two hardline edges. Lastly, really is the fender flares and how the spacing between the tires and the open space here has been reduced. One thing to note also, the length has been increased by 1.6 inches, the width by 1.8. With the overall height being reduced by about 2.3 inches, one thing I expect to be anemic is headroom numbers, but I found it to be fairly cathedral-like even with my 6'2" frame. Primarily, that's because of the vertical height adjustment you can do for both the pilot and co-pilot in the front seat. Now, as for the overall numbers, what you're looking at is around about 177 inches long, 103-inch wheelbase. As for width, around about 68 inches and just under 5 feet tall. But another big number to think about when it comes to sedans is how low you are to the ground, because this being an SUV guy, I do like to have that kind of commanding view. Thankfully, even for this small offering, it's still 6.8 inches of ground clearance. One aspect I talk about all the time is smart key systems and the key fobs and pretty much the interaction with us and our vehicles. And what I like with Nissan across the board, first off, is they keep their key fobs nice, sleek, and light. And you can see it pretty much basically having all the operations I expect and really easy to interact with. Now, it first starts with remote start, lock and unlock, as well as the remote unlock for the rear trunk. But of course, smart key systems mean you can pretty much keep this in your pocket and forget about it. Now, when it comes to interaction with the Versa, the way it works is pretty much with the front doors. A nice singular button right here that once you press it, unlocks all the entry points, hit it again, locks it back up. Now, the only Achilles heel to that, especially on a rainy day like this, is really fumbling around and trying to go straight to here to put things away. Unfortunately, it's going to be a two-step process. Unlock this and then come up here. Now, obviously, if you have the good old apparatus above me, well, that's a no-brainer, but most of us tend to forget that, or a storm has come up upon us. So what I've always said is let's put that access button at every entry point. We have it at the front doors, even the trunk. Why not here on the second row? Now, sweeping around to the back, what I like is the ability to, well, deliver decent cargo, and that's exactly what it does here on the Versa. Around about 15 cubic feet for the SR. A couple other models down below is going to be around about 14.7, but that's just a flip of a coin difference. Now, also back here is safety in the form of a backup camera and even better, backup sensors. I like that because even with the small vehicle, it helps to know where the scratch and ding areas are when you're maneuvering. To help minimize blind spots, one thing that helps is, of course, blind spot awareness there on these side mirrors, but also the amount of glass here on the profile. You'll see it there in the niche front door, as well as when you sweep to the back, with really the amount of glass giving a nice 360 view around this vehicle. Small sedans, one issue really is trunk space. With 15 cubic feet though here in the Versa, really that's not an issue. And what I truly like is these outer niches that truly can handle bigger items. And as always mentioned, that pretty much means my golf clubs. You can see that they'll sweep really from left to right, and almost plenty of room really for a good twosome and maybe a foursome in a pinch, because you can kind of angle towards the back there. Now, if you do need to, you can lower the second row to extend cargo into the cabin. Under the hood, what you're going to find is a 1.6 liter inline four cylinder. That's going to produce around about 122 horses and 114 foot-pounds of torque. Talked about legroom earlier, and what you're going to find is around about 44 inches of legroom for front seat occupants. Now, that pretty much is overkill for almost any size individual. Now, what that's going to mean is when you go to the back seat, that 31 inches that seems somewhat anemic on paper really will extend to about 34 to 35, as front seat occupants really don't need that extra room and slide the seats forward. Front and center, one of the first things you'll notice is really the 7-inch oversized touchscreen with just modest controls on either side. I do like the nice symmetricness when it comes to the volume and tune select on this side, but pretty much everything else you need is right here in front and center. Now, you can go to the home screen, which will allow you to kind of scroll back and forth and use ability, but the one thing that's not integrated with the screen up above is the climate control. This is really just controlled separately. A lot of vehicles really putting these together so the driver really doesn't look down. Now, here on the Versa, is this a huge glance? Not necessarily, but I do like when it is connected. Now, for temperature select, you will find only a single zone in this vehicle, but a nice knob that does have a digital readout for the temperature here, as well as the knob for fan speed as well, and little choices here for mode select. Talked about the backup camera earlier, and it's just as helpful even on a small vehicle. It just gives you a nice viewpoint. You do have these grids, of course, that will change and kind of course, show you the impact zones as you change the steering. Low on the dash, you will find connectivity in the form of a USB auxiliary jack and a power supply, and a nice big niche area to put your devices. Now, one thing that would be helpful is if that was a wireless charging system, which might be an option, but wasn't on this particular model. For the gear shift, you'll find that between the front occupants, low on the dash, as well as the push start button here on the left. Now, between the front occupants as well, you will find dual cup holders, and this shallow tray can hold items or some loose change. Now, above the cup holders, you will find this innovative center console that is niched out. The reason for that is if it was one solid piece, it would cover the cup holders and make it aggravating or even useless to get to them. But it is extended here for the driver, giving nice elbow support. Now, when it comes to cup holders, I did find them to be somewhat undersized and really don't hold every beverage as expected. A lot of vehicles really delivering oversized cup holders that really can squeeze anything in, and a lot of times they're too big. This one I found just a little too tight for every beverage I threw at it. Now, when it comes to center console, what you will see is once you open it, nice decent storage, again can hold items, and you do have this nice little clever area to put change as well. For the gauge cluster, especially on a vehicle this size, typically going to find analog tach and speedometer, but only the analog speedometer here on the Versa, with a huge, nice digital readout for the left portion. Now, in the middle is going to give you your gear selection as well as safety when it comes to the front sensors, as well as the lane awareness there in the middle. Now, that is going to be a vibration-like sensor. I did tend to turn that off because I tend not to like that. Now, over here on the left side, it's nice and innovative with the options you can put here. Now, I have the digital speed, which I prefer, but on the steering wheel, if you interact, what you can do is change it in this particular mode to various options, but you can scroll to the left, and what you'll see is all the shortcuts up above with basically the fuel economy of this particular mode, the listening enjoyment, as well as a traditional looking tachometer. And that does it for this edition road. We're going to test drive behind the wheel of the all-new 2020 Nissan Versa, a vehicle that holds true to its pretty much overall size and interior comfort, but steps up when it comes to design, getting rid of the previous status quo and, well, obviously delivering a more wow factor. And that's where small sedans have evolved to, chiseling things up to at least, well, step up their game and, well, attract consumers, because at the end of the day, if you go with the good old plain Jane atmosphere, well, you're going to get a good old proverbial shrug of the shoulders and possibly a pass on by the consumers. So what Nissan has done here with the Versa speaks volumes about where this brand is headed. Obviously, stepping up their game and delivering design when it matters. Now, as always, thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior. Keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.